Greetings, peace, greetings to all. Let's give honor to the source, to the creator, the ancestors known and unknown. It's probably going to be a follow-up to a part 2 of how the mother wound has transformed my life. The mother and father wound, but the mother wound is very highlighting right now. Y'all bear with me, I'm trying to clear my throat and get my emotions in check. Because I just had a moment where I'm feeling very rageful and angry. Not so much at someone, but it's just the honoring the emotions that comes up around everything right now. So yeah, as I look at that. I'll just pull up something. It's basically like a continuance anyway. I'm just gonna get right into it. But the volume is kind of different. I just challenge y'all to bear with me and probably turn the captions on because I'm still dealing with this mic on the computer until I get a new mic and so forth. I appreciate you all for being here. Appreciate everyone for having the patience with me right now. Navigating this shit is interesting, but I was having a lot of self-realizations last night. I don't know what it is when the moon shifts into Scorpio, it gets so intense. It's like a mirror effect, something transformative, something end up happening. It's funny how I open one of my journals and I flip to something that says transformation. Men must lose themselves, women must claim themselves. I don't know where you hear that, but that's important. I forgot which one I took note for this. And I feel like that's the major concept of my life right now. It's I will say men especially go through rebirths. It's not to say women don't be reborn through their experiences, but in losing ourselves, it's because I've mentioned how we master logic and we go here to our minds first because we're visual. But being that the displacement of how a lot of us, or myself per se, have grown up in experience where dealing with emotional abandonment and physical abandonment very young has caused me to become more hypersensitive to the experiences and cling unhealthily to relationships with women, or just the matriarchal, the representation of the matriarchal. Other than that, I realized in my losing myself, again losing the mind, only to be reborn through the emotions, and almost like the fire aspect of being reborn. I realized I came to the self-realization last night. It was very painful. I was expressing to someone after I had an explosive moment. I was yo, why am I like this? You ever been somewhere where you're why am I like this? Why is it like this? Why do I have to be like that? Because deep within me, it's I know I'm a gentle person. It's you never want to harm yourself or the effects of how your actions can have a ripple effect on everyone around you. And reminded to not ever beat myself up over things that I did not know. Even as I mentioned before previously, like, I don't know how to be a father, and that's simply because of not having healthy men in my life who displayed what fatherhood implies, or if that's the word, or a blueprint, or even an imprint. That the imprint that I had was not something that was very structured and consistent. I saw more of a consistent, the womanizing, or the consistent abusing and neglecting of women very young. So with that, again, you can unconsciously take on a belief system until you come to the self-realization of how that leads to a self-sabotaging behavior pattern, learned behavior, and eventually losing yourself. So when I see, or you hear the word crashing out, or seeing people go through a mental break or something, listen, it happens just about every day. When you aren't aware of the fact of how much you have been neglecting yourself, and how much you grew up around people who neglected themselves also. So with that, what I was getting at is, like, I had a moment last night to where just like clarity. I know Virgo season is like I'm getting so much clarity on like how even a mindset of survival, a mindset of how I'm feeling like I have to feel like I'm being attacked, or being in environments where you've been unsafe or do not feel secure or safe can have your mind scrambling, or even you feeling like you're walking on eggshells. So I was sitting there and I was having a moment. I was like, wow, my mother, it's not to say my mother never loved me, but I was like, I cannot be the only one. But I questioned myself, like, why me? Like, why couldn't my mother have loved me in a more healthy, consistent way? And it really got to the point where I was like telling someone, I said, yo, or telling myself, but out loud, I was like, my mother never nurtured me. She never loved me healthily. I was trying to my best to even go to the memory of recalling a memory that was beautiful, or a memory that was nurturing. And it's like, as much as you want to tell yourself that this person was safe, this person was, oh, that's your mother, you should treat her with respect, that's your mom, and that's this and that's that. And we have been groomed and abused most of our lives to accept the bare minimum, to accept the disrespect, to accept the bullshit, until we no longer realize, like, we don't have to suffer. We didn't come here to suffer. We didn't come here to live in a impoverished mindset. So I was saying to myself, like, wow, my mother never loved me. I never felt embraced. I mean, literally, I would sit there and I was like, yo, and it was not just so painful. I was being guided to, as I was sitting there, I feel like this is how, like, a gateway to the emotions. Like, I'm in a boat, if you can visualize with me, like I'm in a boat paddling, and here's this memory. This memory that I come upon, and I'm seeing, trying to make sense of, like, this mother, or truthfully the abuser that I had, never respected me as a little boy, never embraced me, never nurtured me. And because of mostly my childhood being with my grandmother most of the time, I also realized like that too, realizing the root cause of, being able to connect the intergenerational traumas, the ancestral traumas and so forth, how I was able to see how my mom would still reenact these behavior patterns with the men in her life, and somehow always cycling back, because returning back is different for me, but cycling back to her mother. And it's almost like she's still seeking unconsciously this attention, or maybe intentionally, to act out at this age to get the attention she never got as a child. Now follow me, it's like a lot of what I see in adulthood, and the Venus aspect, how women, when it comes to honesty and then attention. I have to find out the third one again. I gotta go back and look at my videos, the third one that they're ruled by. But I realize, like, when I see people, when I see them, the woundedness and how they display and how they assert their masculinity from the femininity that they've that's been imprinted in them. And I'm recognizing, like, through men and women, or through little girls all the way up to adulthood, is that they've gotten so far away or been so consumed by their experiences as a child that they've taken this mindset of undeveloped, unresolved traumas, repressed emotions and memories and so forth, and literally carried it all the way into adulthood. And what's blocking them from seeing the bigger picture and the bigger perspective on how their actions affects not only them but everything around them. It can either be captivating, as I've said before, or it can either be intimidating when they do see others in, let's say, a better better environment, or making better decisions. And what I see there isn't any internal awareness around, which, again, through child development, through the fact of what they've learned and the learned behavior patterns of believing that this is how they are and will always be. And that's one thing that hit me. I've said before in my previous video how the mother womb has transformed my life, my journey, and receiving even more clarity on that. It's like as much as I mentioned in there how as much as I would love to be around my mother, it's like we have nothing in common. Nothing. And what I mean by that is, like, even our belief system. So there's a lot of grace to where I asked myself last night, I'm like, do I even want to see this woman again? Do I have to? Will I ever feel safe? Because there's a part of me that feels like, well, those who have experienced deep woundings or trust issues with whether it's a woman or a man and so forth, some of your greatest fears is for, your mother to do, will your mother do what she did to do, your mother did to even act out or do what she did to you, to your kids. And that's like one of the greatest, like, protection when you're breaking generational cycles. It's like I literally have to start and pioneer a whole nother life without these people, without this energy. And even with progressing through that and making an effort towards that, it's acknowledging and no longer ignoring what transpired for you to even get to where you are. So with that, I was sitting there, I was like, wow, this woman never, I was literally had memories coming up of, like, going places, and there not ever being any concern, or worry, some people may say concern, of my safety, of the consequences behind the certain decisions that I would make. The responsibility around a mother or father, like even warning you or informing you on how, like this is my thinking or perspective. You would think that, again, from my perspective, I've had talks with my daughter as young, and she's only 4, and I still tell her, like, even when daddy has made some may say a boo-boo or a mistake or just unaware of his actions, it hits me so fast where I like get so emotional at times, and then I'm reminded by my partners, like, don't beat yourself up because you didn't know, or it took for you to have that moment to realize, like, you have the opportunity to be better or make a better decision next go around, or be more gentle with yourself, because that mother wound, I mean, just as well, before I get into that having those talks with my daughter is like, reminding her that daddy has went through a lot of things and has a lot of developed a lot of traumatic experience from women very young, and you don't deserve that unpredictable, like, impulsiveness sometimes, or when I'm unaware that I'm speaking at a certain tone, or doing something to where you have to be reminded, or remind you, like, this is a child, or this is something that that's innocent and still is learning. And what I recognize through my mother wound is the frustration around just the matriarchal, or how much even my daughter is mirroring so much of what I cannot control, and what I cannot control, which is her emotions, her actions, and highlighting how much so how my emotions were controlled, or were expressing my emotions young was like punished. Like I was punished through speaking up. I was silenced. I was, abused. So the frustration around hearing my child or children like cry, it's not always like immediately. It's like it has before come triggering, and I didn't know why. You're saying, like, why is this crying bothering me? Why, and so forth and so forth. And I realized, like, I'm learning that due to my emotions being suppressed as a little boy, as a kid, due to the fact that I was punished for remembering, like, I was whooped or punished or verbally abused because I would poke my lip out, or I would not eat or do things because of the fact of I was upset, I was angry, and so forth. And I was telling my partner, I was like, yo, to be beaten or whooped very young for no reason at all is wicked. It's wild how some of us were literally, just because we were in environments with people who were so unpredictable, with people who were so disconnected from their well-being that they did not even know and care about how this would catch up with us present day and the consequences of that. A lot of our mothers and fathers did not know we would be the karma for them, and karmically meaning, like, as in cleaning up what was left over, what was rotting inside of us that we had to cleanse ourselves of. And for me, I had things coming up to where some things I realized I didn't even know how I got through, bro. To be at home alone by yourself, to have to go places by yourself. You know, I was telling my partner, I was like, I had a great responsibility to myself young. And in that, now it's very challenging to accept people to be of support right now, or in my later years, because I was so used to taking care of my emotions, taking care of, you know, eating things young, you know, having to cook, or being pretty much abandoned so young. I realized how much this affected my internal world. Until now I'm realizing, like, wow, this is a lot of men right now. This is a lot of men who are running from themselves, who won't realize the consequences until they're of age, and later on in their careers, later on in their experience with their children or spouse, that they too have dealt with emotionally unavailable caregivers or guardians or whatever. And how much so I realized, like, with me, how there's even times where I've spoken about this before, like, due to having, and you'll see this a lot with men, even if you really zone in and pay attention, their mother wounds will allow them to be not only like disrespect the feminine principles of themselves, but it will play out in a wounded masculinity through women. And it's like the very thing that they're needing to see, they desperately push away, depending on, especially if they have a daughter, but they're unaware of the learned behavior through a wounded matriarchal, you know, women who display such wounded masculinity because of their lack of respect for self, and they display this through little boys. So again, the energy is still a wounded aspect or a distorted way of being. It's being able to recognize, like, whoa. And I asked myself, I was sitting there like, this is authentic, bro. I was like, I feel more drawn towards my son. And I realized what it was. I feel more drawn towards him because there's a need to protect him more than my daughter. And I needed to say that because it was for me first, but it's going to bring a lot of revelation to a lot of people when you realize, like, depending on your experience, let's say as a woman, sometimes your need or your overprotectiveness of your daughter or son can be rooted in some type of traumatic experience and you don't know it. This is where you see the enmeshment or overgiving, overextending aspect. And it's nothing against my daughter. I just recognize how much that being wounded very young from women is, I've had to learn to navigate and not see my daughter as these women who mistreated me, who mishandled me, who and it's not even so much so like she has to be a woman. No, it's the energy, it's the motherly energy, to even where she's expressing herself, she's honoring who she is. And what I have to ask myself, what a part of me wants to see her not be her authentically. And then I connected to where the rooted part of me, where a woman will show the opposite of that. And this is what's happening internally with a lot of men and a lot of young boys, is where the built up resentment and pain, the rage built up has nothing to do with, let's say, their spouse or their daughter. No, it has a lot to do with an image of what they seen and experienced from women in their earlier childhood into their adulthood. So no matter how much we can assume that we can mask it, there is an inner dialogue in how through our child development, how our image of how we view ourselves internally, which is rooted in the mother, because of how mom teaches us the internal parts of ourselves, the emotions, the nurturing, and so forth, the intuition, all those things that, I talked about the waters. Are the waters calm? It's not to say the current isn't there, because the current is a part of the transformation. The deeper the depths, the darker, and mysterious it is within ourselves, learning parts of ourselves. But a lot of us have been in choppy waters most of our lives. Waters never being calmed. Imagine, again, yourself in a boat as a man or a little boy, and it's rocking back and forth. You're never never getting in your life a sense of safety. This is what a lot of us dealing with chronic nervous systems, or dysregulated nervous systems, because a lot of the internal warfare experiences from our mothers in the womb, and then when they came out, their dysregulated nervous systems, they projected their unresolved emotions and memories and so forth. So one of my greatest lessons I realized in healing the mother wound is bridging from what I experienced with my mother and women of the matriarchal in certain relationships, and I wouldn't ever reconnect or care to experience again, because I realized that the energy, the distorted mother in the women that I connected with, not all, but even the ones that was not familiar in an unhealthy way, that would be normalized to attach myself to because of society, or because of what I deem as not even so much healthy, but what I deem as a sense of security, which was a false sense of security, which is the distorted mother aspect. So let's say a woman did come along at a time where she showed she would embrace, or she would display a more holistic and healthy approach with pure intentions. Being that it was unfamiliar to me, I would either close up, run away, or self-sabotage that shit. So what I'm recognizing now is that I don't have to self-sabotage my relationship with my princess, with my daughter. And this is what you see mostly in society, with people who have connected with someone through some type of wounded state that they did not know until they had that child, or until they had children with this person, and then they came into a deeper awareness of themselves, and whether it's spiritual or whether, whatever it is, and they're recognizing like, wow, I have a lot of things unresolved within myself, and so I need not to beat myself up for what I did not know. And that's why I said, not knowing how to be a father, it's not something you can just go out there and buy off the shelf. It's not something you can just say, oh, I know how to be a father because I have all this money. That's not being a father to me. Providing physically is not just being a father to me. When I'm recognizing the internal aspect of how I have my own emotions, how I have my own experiences, how my belief systems and so forth that were self-sabotaging to now they're more sustainable or stable, then that a part of me is responsible to give that to myself, and then give that to who is in my extended circle, or who's in my inner circle. So with that, there's a greater responsibility to have this awareness, and that's why we need not to beat ourselves up over what we not only cannot control, but it brings a very heightened awareness to how I realized I didn't know how to, a part of the mother wound showed me I didn't know how to nurture myself. I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to embrace myself. And it angers me sometimes because I wish I had a mother who did that. So that's why a lot of these messages I bring forth has a lot to do with connecting the dots to where my daughter, she still, as she grows and blossoms, will have an inner child, and her experiences will be based on what she experienced as a child. And when I see women, or some women that I know, I'm realizing like, wow, they probably was never loved, they probably never knew how to love themselves. And a lot of grace comes in because I I would be so easily, like at times where my trust issues or just the foundation that I had with women, I was at a point where I'm telling you, if I did not have my daughter, I would have never wanted to have anything to do with women. That's how far gone I was. I feel like that's why a lot of men venture off into, same sex, because of maybe dealing with things that they realize that there is no coming back from. They go wherever they can find peace or comfort. And that's one thing that I realized, like with me, and I'm not saying this is all people, but just talking about like the things I went through very young, it has been very, very transformative. But at the same moment, like I tell myself, like what this the wounded masculinity, or so much your mother wound has very highlighted to me, is a lot of how I viewed women, not just from a sexual lens, but from a physical and spiritual lens as well. Because one thing a mother wound will block is the fact of the intuition that we have as men, the emotional awareness, the healthy lens that we are able to see women through, even through their the ignorance of self, or the self, like not being aware of who they are. And again, not even sometimes being their fault, it's just their experiences, their child development. And yeah, it can get it has been I feel like I have a great responsibility now, because I feel like being a great father has been an honorable, honoring the little boy within me, but honoring the parts of me that isn't so pleasant, isn't beautified to society. Allowing my child to, oh man, I'm trying to think this post. Let me see if I can pull up this post. I don't like to pull up too much stuff because let me see if I can pull up this post that she sent me. Come on, man. There was a post about emotions. Oh, that's not good. That's still good though, what I just saw. Let me see if I can pull that up. The unseen inheritance. We don't just pass down eye color and genetics, we pass down unhealed wounds, unspoken fears, unprocessed trauma. This is called ancestral imprinting. What happens if we don't face them? The pain we avoid becomes the pain our children embody. Unconscious patterns repeat as hypervigilance, abandonment wounds, people-pleasing, and perfectionism, emotional disconnection. Bro, this wasn't even a post I was looking for that was shared to me, but just right there, like, I'm talking about the abandonment wounds, I'm talking about people-pleasing and perfectionism. And it's funny when I say abandonment wounds, because what's so deep is that I realize as a father, as a baba, just as this is so empowering at moments where I feel so discouraged, but at the same moment, it takes courage to come here and share this. But one thing this abandonment wound has shown me that highlights is that I won't ever want my children to feel like that when I have to independently step into my purpose, that I'm not abandoning you physically. I always remind my daughter how, when someone comes along and try to say, like the other day, a kid said that, even when they were jokingly saying like she was mean and a liar, I said, you don't have to accept that. You can say, no, I'm not that. And what I plant in her, because again, the Father teaches the external image because of visual, the masculine through that lens of masculinity, but it's still from an internal lens, feminine. The feminine attributes that I had to uncover or rediscover within myself. So it wasn't always like this because I've had to change the inner dialogue with myself. So what I'm saying is, what I express to my princess is like, it's so funny how we've been programmed to tell or empower other people, but we forget to fucking empower ourselves. But I will tell her from experience, like, no, people have told you that, but I want you to know that you are vibrant, you are clear, energetically, you are divinely guided, you are infinitely loved, you are loved and lovable. Like, that's something I remind her to do, because we are their first everything in a way. We are their first reminders of, and that's the beauty of being an extension. We are the first reminders of them, to remind them of the inner world that they come from, or the connection from, when it talks about the ancestral imprinting or the intergenerational. Again, the beauty of what this is said is like how the unseen inheritance, what I've been talking about, the greatest wealth transfer, that's the spiritual inheritance of the inner dialogue, the intergenerational connection that we don't even realize that we are part of, the interconnectedness of how we view ourselves, how we view women. When you look at the image of what femininity and masculinity is, it's immediately turned into gender rather than seen as an energy or frequency of how what was within us, or what has been passed through us and through the wombs from mother and father, or the energy, so forth, has been something generationally, has been something that we've learned, have been something that over eons, over years and so forth, that has been constantly evolving. And so I remind my daughter, like, listen, I look at her in the eyes, I get down to her size, I don't care what no one has told you, remember who you are. And that's what we don't come from a generation of, is a generation of elders and people who remind us of the greatness. Because a lot of these elders, they're very selective few, whether they're gatekeeping or have personal blockages, or have been told that they are not valuable. Again, once this is instilled, and once you have imagery portrayed to a darker people, to a people of certain class, that they are great because of what they accomplish, but other people are not reminded they are amazing and valuable because of what is not always seen as great. This is why, through evolution of people of different shades, no matter their exterior, but most importantly darker shaded people, it's very important for them that what was and how religion was used is to keep people from their spiritual grandness or greatness or interconnectedness. That's why the ancestral tears, fears, the ancestral unseen inheritance, that has always been an imprint, ancestral imprint within us, the DNA and so forth. So this is why you cannot destroy energy. This is why, as a father, I remind my princess of the things that, even though my father didn't give it to me, my mother didn't give it to me, I am still a continuance of that grandness of reminding myself and then reminding her that none of what someone says still shapes who you are. You are able to, as I'm doing, redefine yourself through your experiences, or realize you can too be an alchemist and transmute whatever it is, because you come from that. You come from grandness. You come from spiritualists. You come from powerful beings. You come from fearlessness. Like, no. And that reminder, no matter how far along she goes on in life, or my son, it's already ancestrally imprinted, as I'm a reminder of that. But even the ones before, even if you didn't get to experience your grandfather or grandmother or certain people, you still are an echo of that very spiritual essence that like ripples through your ripples through your DNA and through your blood. So I always remind her of that, and that's the thing. We have not had people who reminded us of. We've heard more no's, and we've heard more yes, you can do this, and we heard more complaining and projections rather than what we can and achieve with or without money. We didn't hear a lot of or reminded of the greatness because of our mothers and grandmothers who were displaced or working or in overhaul, or father was displaced, so many things generationally, just for them to eventually we are the lineage that are a bridge to be reminders. We came here to remember. We came here to recollect what was ours, rebuild, reconstruct, and so forth. And so let me see here. So that what I was getting to, that abandonment wound, is that, as I'm sure myself and my partner, when you reassure yourself, that can be intimidating to a lot of people who don't have security within themselves. So what that does is that this is why this is so important for our kids to know the importance of reassuring themselves very young. Reassuring themselves very young, because what it does, through my learning my mother wound, I'm reminding my princess that no matter if mom and dad is here physically eventually, you still have to know that as you grow, you don't ever abandon your truth, your authenticity, your integrity. No matter what the world is trying to come and tell you who to be. And that's what you see in school systems, that's what you see in all these systems that are crumbling. It doesn't teach kids the importance of reassurance, assuring themselves that they are great, they are beautiful, and so forth. When you have different classes and so forth that is teaching them, then like that this class or this person is more valuable. When you have imagery out there that is teaching them, whether brown, dark brown, or whatever, that they are not as valuable as the next because their father and mother work in this sector or they live in this community. That's bullshit. So of course it's going to make a child feel less valuable, unseen, and that's the thing that we're recovering. I'm not going to let someone pretend and tell me like, oh gosh, I shouldn't be great because I don't live in this neighborhood, or my friends aren't someone that's a celebrity and all of this. That shit doesn't matter at all. So moving on, the importance of that is like we also teaching our kids not to people please. This is what your society and communities are teaching. Oh, that's a person of authority, but they don't respect you. They don't respect themselves. Oh, that's a person that, I don't care if it's a police, a judge, I don't care who it is. I will not teach my kids to people please and focus on trying to be perfect for a society, for a system, for anybody who's overextending themselves to feel validated or valuable in this world. No, we learn. That's the reason why a lot of us don't feel we can succeed because of that, or feel that we are great at everything and what we do, because we've been given celebrities or people of certain status who try to perfect their life, who focus on perfectionism, who people please in the shadows. And so, no, this is where the tide has shifted to where we teach our kids the importance of having emotional connection with themselves, having a balanced relationship with themselves, not abandoning themselves for their mother and father. And that's the importance of what I was getting at. It's like, I'm teaching my child, like, listen, by me not saying I'm not going to always be around has a lot to do with they're going to come a point where I'm not teaching you to be responsible early, but you are going to come into this awareness that you are responsible for you. You're being self-sufficient. Your emotions are yours first. So that you don't abandon those parts of yourself, because the world will teach you how to hate that and never come home and love that part. And that's what we're doing now. I'm coming home to the parts of myself that I've abandoned. I was in, even when it comes to artistry and so forth, trying to climb the so-called invisible ladder with sports and basketball. Again, people pleasing. When I see in these things, is I see people through the distorted way of the mother and father. People are people pleasing their way up to trying to paint this perfect image and so forth. And truthfully, they don't have, being the mother wound will highlight, again, emotional disconnect. I will not instill this into my children because it's not meant for me. I came here to shake shit up. I came here to change stuff. And with that shatters the illusion of how I'm viewed as a man, as a being, as a human being, as a person. It is what it is. So what else? Healing looks like sitting with the shadows instead of numbing, choosing presence over reaction, offering compassion to your inner child. One of my greatest challenges is that right there, choosing present over reaction. One thing about the mother wound, it has showed me how important breathing is, because in moments where anger and rage comes up or some type of emotion, I've had to learn to breathe and honor it, because if not, this is where you see a world who's, again, become so hypersensitive that they are first reactive rather than responding to their breath or being present. So you don't have a world that is focused on healing, which is sitting with their shadow instead of having generations who have numbed it, as you see. Offering compassion to your inner child. One of the greatest things that I've had to do is forgive myself for what I did not know. Holding space for the parts of myself where I couldn't protect my inner child, or I can protect my inner child now, but I couldn't protect the child who could not defend itself from the abusers or the verbal abuse and so forth. Creating rituals of safety and rhythm in your home. That's one of the most important things now I'm learning, even through a transition of how I looked at my relationships, how I went from relationship to relationship. I start to recognize that, let me just read this. I start to recognize, I'm going to go back to that. I start to recognize, because this is very important, I start to recognize why, like I was telling my partner, I said, dang, I see why my mother never had a home. And once I start to really connect the dots of your emotional safety or security, your nervous system is just as vital from you obtaining a home and stabilizing it. So then I started to connect, I was like, oh, when I look at the Section 8, when I look at certain things that were implemented, certain housing systems that were implemented to keep fucking people, as you right now, it's probably highlighting the distress and discomfort around mortgages, housing, paying bills, and whatever. It's highlighting the fact of how the baby boomers, through the obsession of numbing themselves through their emotions and more focus on the physical and neglecting their emotional and spiritual aspects and mental aspects of themselves, that they were more hyper focused on materialism and material security, to now, again, where we're present day, to where, what does that shit matter if you're not emotionally stable, if your well-being isn't a priority in the home? And that's why I've always said, I thought I was ahead, or I thought sometimes I was a step behind or so forth, when I'm realizing, no, you're integrating or pioneering being somewhere where not only do you feel safe within your being, but you feel safe in your community, your environment, in your country, and so forth. And that starts with the emotional parts of yourself, because I cannot not see the fact of what a darker woman that gave birth to me, or a darker man who gave birth to me, has experienced in a country, in an environment, in communities, in a spiritual setting and mental setting in the last few hundred years. I cannot ignore those unresolved things, not speak about it, clear my heart, clear my mind, clear the karma around that, to navigate and prepare myself and my generations after me a place where, not just physically, but emotionally, and a place within myself to where I can say I came home to myself and I'm at peace with what has has happened, I can now realize and acknowledge and no longer run from the emotional turmoil. And so with that, I'm able to create a space wherever that is and wherever I'm being guided to, so I don't have to question and look over my shoulder or question the fact of, why am I not able to just live a life abundantly and prosperously. So yeah, that's, man, it's sometimes it's a shocking reminder that I'm really doing this, because it can become very challenging at times, because sometimes you're fighting an unseen war that you're not even like aware of until you come into that until you're appointed, almost like glasses that the universe gives you that you cannot remove. And so you cannot unsee what you saw, and then the responsibility that comes with that. So like I said, I can see how the systems that are very controlling and narcissistic and very manipulative have placed people in positions where we're resolving and facing the emotions, the ancestral, the intergenerational things that we were never basically reminded until now. And so it has followed us into now. So it's like the most challenging part is like, where do you get your resources, or where do you build, or where do you start? And that's what learning like the flow of life, of just coming back home has taught me to be more secure within myself, and sharing that with others, to realize like you're causing, or what you've experienced has a lot to do with what you're hiding or what you're running from internally. Let me go back to where, because there was something I wanted to get more in depth of. So yeah, that creating so that was one of the things I was going to get into, creating rituals or safety of rhythm of your home. For me, it has not been so much of not how could I say this? Like, for me, what has happened is, it was very the divine highlighted for me that, I've said this countless times, where you are not to obtain a home or live in a place until you come into this awareness that the home within you has not been stable. So you will not know how to stabilize it, or it will not be stable when you enter. Now imagine that a lot of us through our childhood development, realizing that being that we didn't grow up in stable environments, that our relationships, we would create more cycles or loops of unstableness, and that plays out in various ways, like business-wise and so forth. So for me, I realized like a lot of my mother wounds was centered around that I saw my mother again, the patterns of how she would always go through things and cycle back to her mom. And I was like, dang, what is this showing me? It showed me the emotional instability that I also developed. And even though I'm a boy or a man, or it just played out differently, it still highlighted that in most of my relationships, until like present day, that I did not have I didn't feel emotionally safe. The trust issues around feeling safe with women, being that I was abused young, being bullied by men and so forth young, that too, like feeling safe, or the home within me was cluttered with, it's almost like a hoarder, cluttered with unresolved emotions, unresolved, ancestral trauma. So with that, I realized like, it's very important, if I could guide you to the fact of paying attention to your mother or fathers or whomever in your life, how and what their home looked like. And that's elders, like homes I walk by and I see how cluttered, how hoarded their home is. And this highlights again where they grew up in environments where or they in their generations, they really highlighted material. They saw material success or gaining material things as a priority over their well-being, as I've said before. So that right there is a telltale sign of an emotional disconnect. And being that a lot of them went through warlike tactics or abuse or whatever, it really highlights the fact of now present day when I'm walking and I see these communities or I see environments where they're so disassociated from the present that's why when you try to communicate with them, they're so reactive, because they don't have that sense of emotional security, and there's an emotional disconnect to not only themselves and to the mother that they came through, or the father, and so forth. That mother energy is what connects us all. That's what the rise of the divine mother is, or the great mother is, because mama teaches us that everything beginning with her matriarchally connects us all. When you look at living organisms, when you look at the water, the ocean, and so forth, your emotions is first what connects you to your experience, your spiritual, mental, and so forth. And when you think about a memory here, the emotions comes with it. And that can be joy, that can be, a lot of things. So that right there, all of it connects to experience. So that's what mama is. Mama is the waters. Mama is the memory, and so forth. So that part that has been missing or removed from humanity, society, culture, and also, the country, all of those sacred parts of what kept us together, that is what's being reconnected, is that interconnectedness of what connects us all. And so that being said, again, when you look at environments and the systems that were in place, it was to not keep people in a place of emotional stability and security. Because now you see the housing, I don't care about the communities where, again, yes, you can see a lot of elders have a lot of certain things, but they still have a disconnect to emotionally, to where they don't even want to deal with other people, because that's how much they've built and disassociated from. Again, having emotions will allow you to be empathetic, will allow you to have empathy, compassion. And when you have compassion for yourself, you have compassion for others. But when you have religion or certain structures in place that have kept people from being more focused on obtaining, again, materialism through that generation is a form of the structures of how churches came to be, how a lot of governmental structures, how what you see presently, economically, again, a system that was not built on interconnectedness or on empathy. No, it was created on division, because empathy and interconnectedness and intergenerational will show you the importance of unity. You and I. And so with that, it's again, for me, I'm realizing, like, wow, this is a collapsing of an empire, a nation that doesn't prioritize empathy for not only for humanity but for women. And it keeps them, or have kept our mothers and great grandmothers over the years, in a dysregulated or chronic, developing a chronic nervous system. So they're not wanting to have support in these moments. For a lot of them, has a lot to do with, they never were taught to have empathy for themselves. They never were taught to, this is where that, you gotta work hard and work hard. Again, that's a part of being disassociated. That's a part of it, disconnecting emotionally, because you won't prioritize your well-being. You won't, like, come on now. And so now that we're realizing, like, outside of the color, this has been an energy and a frequency thing. Now we're realizing, like, well-being and empathy and compassion with our inner child connects us to that intergenerational trauma, that ancestral trauma, that ancestral imprint, to create a blueprint to redirect what was at a point in time in one direction of people who did not see a bigger picture of people living amongst each other without concerns about their color, concerns about their class, their money, shit that don't even matter to the mother, to the divine mother at that. And so with that, the divine mother and masculine energy that is rising has a lot to do with what was the opposite of that. So the opposite of those very things that we refuse to see is a representation of what you see right now currently, of even the younger kids, even the when you have elders, or people saying they can't do nothing with the generation. Of course, because what worked for you don't work for them, and you don't want to accept it. But a lot of us have. I've accepted it and sat back and realized, okay, their approach didn't work, so my approach has to be different. My approach has to come from a place of realizing that not so much how can I put myself in their shoes, but how can I have empathy or compassion for this child that has not been embraced, that has not ever been told that they've been loved or they are lovable. And with that comes with the uncomfortability that they may retreat, they may run away, they may feel that being whatever their experience is in their childhood, that you're manipulative. And it's a lot that comes with that. So that's where a lot of surrenderance comes in. That's where a lot of acceptance comes in, to where you can do what you can, but you can't do everything. So what I've had to realize, that I recognize the instability within myself emotionally from the matriarchal, how a lot of them can never stabilize something. My mother, so that I was like, wow, this is how I'm going to come into my stability, because I've had to realize that first, beginning with the matriarchal, I've had to learn to stabilize myself. So it would have never worked from going to that mother wound I was carrying from a very young age, to woman to woman, carrying my clothes, or going here, the womanizing behavior, or not knowing it then, but the abandonment, the overextending, the superhero complex of saving someone and trying to swoop in and save her from whomever or whatever, and telling myself, oh, I can be your everything, your knight in shining armor. And in reality, no, I wasn't. I was literally, through my actions, eventually, no matter how much I masked it at that moment, that my actions were destroying a so-called empire, or whatever I wanted to build, which in reality it could have never have been built with those women, simply because they too were not in tune, or they were not on the same wavelength or in alignment with what I was now being called to do. If that makes sense. So with that, I recognize a lot of that was a catalyst too right now. A lot of this was a catalyst for me to come into that awareness of they were mirroring back the mother wounds, whether I knew it then, but now knowing it now, presently, that I have a lot of compassion when they didn't, when they couldn't, because they never knew what to have or have compassion for themselves. They never knew or had foundations upon having compassion for men, or empathy, or even, an idea of what a divine masculine is, or what a man who's in tune emotionally is, or having to learn how to nurture that man or little boy or teenager or so forth through those ever-changing experience, which again is his feminine attributes, the feminine flow. But them not being able to recognize the wounded masculinity, because they were also a part of a society or a blueprint of that wounded masculinity that you see displayed in society. So how could they remind me? How could they hold me accountable? But it was me being showed I had to hold myself accountable and not stay and overstay my welcome, even if my welcome was not even a greeting almost. So I had to realize, like, a lot of those relationships that you realize is that It was teaching you to come back home to self. It was mirroring back your unresolved things, to where now I tell people, I express to people that relationships or marriages or certain things were a mission or a purpose for you to realize, like, to deepen your awareness with self. How was that distracting you for self? Yeah, you probably had to go through that marriage just to realize, to come more into awareness of this lifetime or this moment. I'm here to change the narrative around what the matriarchal may represent. So I want to dive deeper into myself, to be celibate or go abstinence, however you want to say it, to heal the spiritual part that my mother did, the womb space, or to build something structurally that empowers women that hasn't been implemented in the last few hundred years. You know, the image around all of that changes. Your image, your inner image, because a lot of woundedness, a lot of wounded masculine that has been displayed by women, you'll realize a lot of you women are here today, present day, to go through whatever your climate is. I don't care if you're a part of a royal family. I don't care if you're in another country and so forth. What matters is the fact that you are here to see what the distorted mother looked like, the false mother, and due to that your removal or being uprooted, your image, your inner image has been tainted from that distorted mother, from that unhealthy or toxic mother that was probably jealous or envious and so forth. And with that, you are to step into your own power and voice unapologetically. And this is where I came across the video. I had the notes here. It's so amazing how it's aligned. It's like moving to your divinity and sacredness. When you look at a lot of women you come from, they didn't know the importance of sacredness. A lot of them never told the stories of how they were molested or sexually abused, and they kept that distorted belief system in their being and projected it onto you, or had resentment towards you living your life, or because they didn't get to fulfill their dreams and purpose and so forth. So again, it's learning to take up the space that was taken from you, if that makes sense, as women now. Let me see, what else did it say? You don't automatically. So it says, when you don't automatically force yourself to forgive because they need to sit in their anger because something was wrong. Wow. So from that, it's like, this is why I hear a lot of people are so apologetic, like saying sorry. A lot of you have developed this, and this is going to be for men and women. It's because you've been in a belief system where people, you're taught to, you're not a sorry person because that word holds energy. You're not sorry. It's the fact that you have not been around or been in an experience of people who are unapologetically them, who are authentically them. So you will say sorry as a woman that's 40, 50, 60 years of age. Say sorry for something that there was nothing wrong from the beginning. Now, there's nothing, let me tell you, there hasn't ever been anything wrong with you. Whoever needs this, sister, brother, whomever you are, there's nothing that ever been wrong. This isn't about wrong or right. This is about walking upright and taking back your power to stand in who you truly are. Because that being, you feel like you're wrong, won't allow you to have compassion for the versions of you that did not know. They did not know how to have compassion in the first place. That compassion for the inner child or the little child that could not defend itself from a mother or a father or society or environment and so forth. So as this energy begins to rise within us, you'll realize, like, you start to own your power and voice. I've seen it with my partner. I was like, wow. Well, one thing about me, and one thing you'll realize how you start to have an effect on people, is that you will realize, like, it's not about copying. Let me tell you something. If energy cannot be destroyed, you have to realize, like, if you're around someone a lot and so forth, you will either pick up on them or they will either pick up on you. That's just like child development. We're still sponges no matter what our age is. If you're in a society, you eventually start to adapt. It even if you don't want to. And that's what most people fear, is that when they're not capable of coming out, or they're comfortable with what they're used to being in, they're not willing to adapt, because the feminine energy and principles will force you to adapt to the climate, to shift your mindset, your way of being, your approach, and so forth. So when people are comfortable, this is where they become complacent, and then this is where their reactions, because of what is built up from that feminine energy that they've holding on, no matter whether no matter the gender, they still that will build up resentment, that will build up rage and anger, because a lot of these elders, a lot of people never had. We are the way showers for them. As much as they hate it and they react, we are way showers. We are way makers. We are gateways and portals. Some of you mothers are portals for the new generation that are coming in, of beings that are powerful, of babies that are here to create a new order of things in this world. Just as your mother and father before them, I'm sure that they had conflict with their mothers and fathers. This is what the spiritual warfare is about. It's a resistance, the internal generational, the intergenerational or ancestral trauma. The trauma in itself is the resistance towards healing. This is what a lot of people don't want to accept, is that to create a fucking better world, we have to make better decisions towards our well-being, towards how we are guardians, towards how we manage our finance, towards how we think about ourselves, how we feel about ourselves, how we approach ourselves, and so forth and so forth. And through that transformation, again, men, we have to learn to realizing in losing ourselves in these moments, no matter what your generation is, or especially millenniums, losing yourself, it's okay. But it's about being reborn through the fact of what you thought you knew you didn't know, and not beat yourself up over that. Because I'm a living proof of the fact of, like, bro, I don't have it all together. If it was up to me, I wouldn't have rushed the fact of, like, oh, I gotta have all this money now, because guess what? That shit would have been a distraction from getting to know me more. From getting to know me more on an emotional level, because had I came into certain things earlier, guess what? I would have went through a cycle of what I've seen other men go through, what I've seen society, what I've seen rappers, a culture, let's say, of flaunting materialism rather than seeing the value in just enjoying it. Because a lot of our elders, they gain all this material stuff, but they don't even enjoy it, or they do it from a place of ego. A lot of present-day men, a lot of them do things from a place of validation. This is why I had to learn that I'm my own person, I'm my own being, I'm my own everything, in a way of realizing how that connects me to everyone. Because as much as I thought I was supposed to be around and be a part of certain things, no, it takes a lot for a man to be disciplined to move along rather than to be a crowd, be amongst a crowd. When I see coaches, when I see rap, when I see a lot of stuff, I see a lot of, again, from my perspective, a lot of men that don't know how to move strategically or with themselves, so they don't have an impact, as they feel they have an impact on a lot of people, but in reality, I can see them as a lot of sheep or weakness, because they don't know how to move without or have a healthy balance. And this is what you see, a lot of codependency in certain demographics. A lot of young men don't know how to have a healthy balance towards life, because depending on their child development, they're people pleasing, and then they deal with betrayal or instability very young, so they codependently, or they're attached unhealthily to their environments, or this becomes they get into what they call, I'm gonna use the word wrong, but they get into crowds where they're influencing them to be something that they're not. That's why music is so influential. How it's used, That's why you see a lot of those rappers and shit. I'm calling out for what it is because I'm authentic. That's why you see a lot of them have a crowd of dudes around them. But a lot of those crowds or a lot of people, I see it all the time, you're dealing with men who have unresolved shit. And typically a lot of them are going to backdoor that very person who has the spotlight on them. And that very person who has a spotlight is not really encouraging them to step into their purpose. No, a lot of them, even if they are, and let's say they aren't, a lot of those young men, they want to have that spot, but they don't realize that they're looking externally to this person, and in reality, it's already in you. But again, a lot of us, we're not reminded of our greatness. So when we see someone else walking into it, there's a jealousy, there's an envy. Not realizing that's your own internal warfare. It has nothing to do with you. I mean, it has nothing to do with the other person. It's you. So that's why I see how the culture out a lot of things where music and certain things have been used to, in this Aquarian age, being opposite of Leo. Leo is the spotlight. Leo has a lot to do with being the center of attention. So when you're an unevolved Leo, or that energy of unevolved, it will highlight the self-righteousness or a lot of artists that you see today, a lot of people that you see today that want that focus, and that's not the energy that we are, that's being unveiled right now, or that's happening. Aquarian age is exposing all of that. It will expose everyone who is not for seeing that interconnectedness, or what has led up to being what is the opposite of the humanitarian, who is not for everyone, who is not for the all when it comes to on an emotional, spiritual, and physical level, whether that be monetarily, whether that be business-wise, and so forth. All of this collapsing has a lot to do with the self-righteous, or monopoly, and what's the other word I was coming to? The opposite of oneness, or the opposite of the fact of seeing the importance of how we all are valuable, even through other people's ignorance. So again, even with my sisters and mothers, women, whoever you are, whatever you classify as, you're also, women must claim themselves. This is something that I'm going to leave y'all with. When I say women have to claim themselves, that means when I be telling y'all that little girl, that daughter, like, you are a daughter of a father, but at the same time, before that, claiming yourself, there's nothing in society that, this is why you're fighting back and going through a lot of these treacherous moments, to where you're reclaiming the femininity through the wounded masculinity. You're reclaiming that. It's like a reversing of a curse. It's breaking the cycle, that through that wounded masculinity, you're recovering the healthy parts of you, the healthy femininity, so that you can no longer walk in that wounded masculinity. Meaning that you're that reclaiming of that inner child, that little girl, those memories, facing those repressed things and suppressed memories and so forth. Your walk through your masculinity, through your assertion, through your assertiveness, will be intentional now, whether being unintentional and not realizing the impact that you have had on yourself, the mothers and other mothers, enabling these young boys and so forth to create more of a chaotic or imbalanced society. So again, you are reclaiming what was sacred. That's what this is about, your sacredness. If you have went through sexual abuse or sexual trauma or even things like that, you're reclaiming that will look very uncomfortable, unfamiliar to a mother who you know went through it, to someone you know, because that uncomfortability will have you face the internal emotions, unresolved things, whether ancestrally and so forth. It will cause you to go through a womb cleansing. It will cause you to go away from sex. It will cause you to see whether you see in a distorted way of how you used to have sex, and realizing like, oh, I was telling my partner last night, I was like, whoa, it just came out. I said, you know what? I'm very good at having sex. I had to say this. I'm very good at having sex, like how we grew up around over-sexualized society. We're very good at having sex, but we're not very good at loving ourselves. We're not very good at learning how to honor You see the importance of how sex is sacred. So now I challenge you all to take up space. Take up space in environments and places. Take up space in the places where you are not valued and appreciated. And how you do that will look like you being unapologetically you. You're not feeling shame and guilt around speaking up for what has happened to you in your childhood. Tell your story. Take back your power. And so that's the thing that women have to do is, as current day, modern day women, it's like not looking externally to these rappers or to whomever else who you knowingly, they still hold a motherly energy, but they don't represent what is valuable and sacred. In their lens they may have, but that's still the representation of a distorted mother. But when you're talking about reclaiming claiming your power, stepping back into your power and your voice, then you'll recognize where you have been silenced. You won't have to look to a feminist movement. You won't have to look to a speaker. You won't have to look to no one else for what you already have within you. That's the power of the collective. That's the power of you individually. You don't have to feel shame and guilt around the consequences of someone saying, well, if you don't speak up about what you experienced in that hospital, that medical system, that relationship and so forth, you have to reclaim your power. There were times where I even had guilt and shame around what I experienced with myself and my partner until I became aware, like, wow, she has a right to speak up for what has happened to her. Just as I had a right to speak up, not even just a right, but it was my birthright to speak up for what has happened to me. So we don't encourage each other to do what is in integrity. Because a lot of what I recognized, I was like, is my fear of losing this person only to find myself again. And that's why I feel like a lot of us grew up in fear-based relationships. The fear, the codependency, the fear of the consequences of being alone or just learning to be with ourselves in solitude. The balance of learning, because as you take back your power and reclaim it and take back your voice, women, you will realize that your inner voice has been silenced. You are to reclaim and claim, take back your power of your inner voice. That's what your intuition is. That's what your inner GPS is. And you take it back through religion. If you are learning more to be spiritual or in tune with your ancestors, that's how you reclaim your power and your voice. And that's how you move with dignity and respect of self. No longer devaluing and degrading yourself or feeling like you have to people please. No, this is how you will realize that a lot of your relationships, marriages, and so forth have not been stable or have brought to this because it has been you. I'm telling you, man, that's a lot of shit that when you look at why a lot of our grandmothers and so forth that was with married men that was in military, married for money, it's because their generation, due to probably them unknowing at the time the importance of their well-being, they stayed silent for so long because of the material security. I don't give a fuck who someone can say I'm lying. That, bruh, we know of a lot of people that are still present day. A lot of these homes and environments, a lot of those people are withering away and leaving this world in a very belief system. A lot of mothers had children and so forth due to the material security at that time in a generation where that was all they had. And I'm saying it's grateful, it's gratifying because it led us to here. To now where the importance of a lot of you claiming your power or claiming yourselves and taking back your power and voice, you will realize as you arise, you will begin to unify with women that has a belief system like that. Because once you start to see that all of this shit is collapsing and crumbling, you will see the highlight around women who are preachers. You will see the highlight around women who are narcissists. And this is what I'm challenging. You will see women who are so centered around, as I've said in a previous video, the dangers of women who are man-centered. And what that means is centered around wounded men, women who are enabling woundedness. And that means they don't have, when you claim yourself and your power and voice, then you reclaim the image of the power of a woman, of the little girl, because childhood comes before adulthood. You are reclaiming the power of your essence and energy. And through that reclaiming your power, you begin to see the importance of how all women should reclaim their power and take back their power and their voice and so forth. Instead of then it'll highlight the division amongst the women who have been enabling these feminist movements, these movements where you'll be able to see the men and women who are keeping the distorted, or have tried to keep the distorted, disabled, try to disable you or devalue you or disarm you in ways spiritually, so that you don't reclaim your power. I'm telling you, behind a lot of these women that are men-based, and that has a lot to do with religion, it has a lot to do with a lot of men who are false representation of a divine masculine, because their image is either wounded, or their image is they bought into this narrative with forces unseen to keep a narrative of keeping women matriarchally from reclaiming their stepping into their power and claiming themselves. Because just think about baggage claim. Imagine you're about to shift and the airport holds your luggage or you can't find it, right? Oh, this is a beautiful analogy. I'm going to leave with this. This is most of modern day women. And I'm going to say the collective is where you are, or let's say grandmothers are afraid or have been afraid. Like right now, this is so wild. My grandmother she's afraid to fly. And whatever her fear is, she'll drive somewhere, but not far, because of whatever attachment she has to the uncomfortability of moving outside or shifting outside of what's comfortable. So, and it's funny, a plane flies by. So her fear of that will not allow her to experience fun or life, or to live a different experience outside of what she has dealt with in her upbringing into her adulthood, because she's content. So for a lot of you, you are not what your mother and grandmother are present day. You are in that reclaiming, like the baggage, like, because it's called baggage claim. This shit is amazing. For some of you, your life can look like how you checked in, you got your ticket. This is your life. Your ticket is your purpose. You got your ticket, right? And this ticket can, for those of us on the spiritual spectrum of things, like, you could go to a higher timeline. You can go to a different experience. Or for some of you, that ticket could be a ticket away from dysfunctionality. You know, it's so many things that you can come away from everyone that doesn't serve your purpose. So this ticket is basically your purpose into living and claiming your power, your voice again. For some, a lot of you are afraid of doing something for the first time, moving somewhere, being away from people, and that highlights a codependency that is probably internal, or an unhealthy attachment, or the fear around, well, who's going to take care of my mother, who's going to da-da-da. I didn't say you had to be gone forever. I just say the experience could change your life. You can meet from that unhealthy attachment of your mother, that you meet a woman who can mother you or reciprocate a love that you never experienced. And I'm not saying she has to be your mother, but she carries a more sacred energy. So that as the baggage, you know, it circles around, and some of you're too in your head about well, what is this going to happen? What is this going to happen? Which is normal, because all of the subconscious fears are going to come up around the decision. This is normal. So they call it baggage claim. And your shifting has a lot to do with what you're about to do and how it's going to have an effect forever on you and your lineage. So now you can either grab this bag, which has come around. You can either grab this bag and walk confidently and not look back, or you can grab this bag and cancel your flight. Because look, it's funny, because fight or flight. And fight or flight, again, if you look up that, it has a lot to do with trauma, or has a lot to do with traumatic experiences, where a lot of us naturally, I see it as normal fight and flight, because it can be reaction, or this is how I'm going to respond to what I have been to in this lifetime. I'm actually going to flight and go away and not feel guilty and shame. Or the fight in you can come in to where you want to fight against and have resistance, which is normal, because that's what fears are, the resistance of the ancestral or people before you who did not ever take this opportunity. Because some of you have the money, some of you have the career, some of you are in different perspectives of life or different avenues to where you do want to go away from the medical system, you do want to go away from the industry, music, you do want to go away from the medical, you do want to go away from whatever occupation, whatever it is. And a lot of you will have the opportunity in this lifetime to step away from this and step into yourself, come home to yourself, and claim your power. This is what the imagery I want to give you. As you grab that bag, you're taking with you, listen to me now, you're taking with you not only the bag, but no matter where you go, this is also important, no matter where you go, not only are you breaking a cycle, but you also are taking with you the memories, the lessons, the stories of ancestors who didn't have the opportunity to do what you did. That's why you don't have to feel shame and guilt. I'm not saying it shouldn't come up, but you don't have to stay in it. But you're taking that baggage, that in that baggage is also that ancestral imprint that you will continue as you go wherever you are. Now, this was brought in your perspective on how you view life. Okay. I don't came all the way to my phone. Not my phone, but... So again, let me finish this. 20%. So again, as you claim this new life, this is a new experience. The emotions, because the ancestral imprint is the emotions, the spiritual, the mental, all that will follow you as a representation of the matriarch. And this goes the same. Men, I want you to put yourself here, but I'm talking to the women especially, as a matriarchal. Because some of you, in reclaiming your power and your voice again, has a lot to do with you stepping outside of that relationship, away, that partnership, that business, that career, that marriage. Because some of you are reliving the same behavior pattern, or learned behavior, traditions that your mother and so forth upheld for years. And it's not to say tradition isn't great, but a lot of you are here to recreate that. A lot of you are the first to pioneer what tradition looks like for you. That's what claiming your power is. As you grab that bag and you walk and you get on that plane, you're also, again, creating a whole new tradition on life. Some of you are supposed to get land and reclaim land through this generational wealth transfer. A lot of elders that are shifting out, a lot of land is coming available. A lot of you are going to different countries. A lot of you are doing different things because you are to reclaim your voice and power there which in a country or environments where you couldn't do it. So a lot of you from different countries and nations, again, you are to probably come from another country to America to reclaim the power, to speak your truth there, which in another country that you, due to a certain religious, due to a certain thing, that you will be crucified spiritually, you will be outcasted, just because you don't want to dress the same, but just because you don't want to look the same. Your soul came here to do that. Some of you are in that are in, let's say, a country of the Americas or other outskirts of England and so forth. Your energy has been protecting that environment for so long. Your energy, by being there, has been protecting that which you thought was sacred, but up to this very moment, the deities, the ancestors, the mothers that have followed you, the great-grandmothers and so forth, have been not so much, they are supporting you in your transition. I know for a lot of you, you don't feel like you have the finances, but for some of you, as you transition, your energy and breaking that cycle across water, because things are cleansed through water, spells and things are broken through water. I was telling someone, a lot of you are to, as you transition and shift, you will realize that there's ancestral connection there that you didn't know. There's people awaiting you. There's financial blessings. There's emotional, spiritual clarity. There's so much there to where it's so much on you claiming your power again, or reclaiming that your grandmother and mother couldn't do. Some of you come from I'm going to use the term immigrants. Some of you come from spaces and places where your grandmother did not have the opportunity because an unaliving of a man or a spouse and so forth in a war. Some of you are here to reclaim that partnership, that love, that harmony and peace with a spouse after you leave said relationships, or even if you're alone, you venture off and go somewhere. There will be in these moments a connection that will broaden your horizon. And then again, once you arrive to these places, it can be very uncomfortable, but you will know that you're where you're supposed to be because it's unfamiliar. So in that unfamiliarity, a lot of you are to learn to stabilize and come into different teachings, different spiritual teachings, come into a wellness aspect of life, a holistic life. Some of you will mix families or tribes, being that you will have an understanding and overstanding, not this distorted way of what they call poly, but you will know the importance of, some of you are tribal women. Some of you are either supposed to live to yourself on the land, build what you build, because it's balance. And some of you will have to balance that out with other people, but some of you also will come in connection with other people of different demographics, of different nationalities and so forth, to bring a different energy, to reclaim something, whether it's past life, whether it's this present life that you're supposed to karmically clear and reconnect and rebuild and so forth. A lot of you have this assignment, and a lot of you were awaiting this confirmation. What else? A lot of you are leaving countries where, again, you are being exiled out of. That's the term. A lot of you are in countries where a way is being made, and it would be made very clear for you in a vision or dream or through symbolism. Pay very close attention. This is why a lot of connections that you are vibrating out of or elevating higher has a lot to do with your higher calling, your higher purpose, and so forth. This has a lot to do with you not knowing what's on the other side, but you do know. And this is what a lot of claiming your power for a lot of you are, is because that claiming your inner power has a lot to do with your mother and great-grandmother and so forth did not do or have the opportunity, because they were, let's say, a spiritualist, a medicine woman, or a woman that was classified as a witch, or someone who was very important in the spiritual realm into this physical plane. A lot of you are gatekeepers and waymakers. So a lot of you are to venture and go to certain places for the protection of other mothers, especially their children. leave a lot of these places, the monetary system will fail or collapse. The economic system will collapse. A lot of things will collapse because your spiritual significance in that place has kept that place afloat. Y'all don't realize, a lot of you women, it's your energy that has kept these structures in place. And now every time that you come into something and it clicks, whether you come to this video and you share and so forth, there's something here for someone. I'm just a vessel, I'm just a messenger. Everything isn't just for me. This is the moments we're living in. Everything ain't for everybody, but who is it for? They'll know and they'll act. Because you're going to have people. I gave you an analogy where there are some people who are willing to grab the bag, but they're not willing to leave on their own. They don't have the courage, so they get discouraged. They'll make a phone call. They'll do something, to keep them from walking into their destiny and purpose. And some of you this lifetime are to do something completely different that's unfamiliar. And know that before you depart, I am clear. You can say this. I am safe internally. I am divinely guided and protected. Because that's a part of taking back your power and reclaiming it. You are loved. You're vibrant. And I know this is for a lot of you, millions, hundreds of millions, because a lot of you are here to walk away from religion that have kept you silent in your mother's silence. A lot of those structures in place were to silence women and not for them to claim their power and their voice. A lot of your careers and so forth, because you're here to rebuild and restructure these things for you and see the importance of the sacredness of all children and for them to live amongst each other outside of their nationality and culture. And what's going to happen here, you're also going to be teaching these kids. You're new teachers. You're new world teachers and herbalists and spiritualists and so forth, so that these kids learn to live amongst each other with gifts, with natural gifts, spiritual gifts, and learn different dialects, languages, and so forth. And seeing what you have in common with other women. Value systems. You're going to be rebuilding value systems, systems in its entirety, belief systems on the world and yourself and so forth. And you got this. The divine believes in you, the sacred mother, the mothers, your ancestral, they're betting on you. It's already written. So I gotta go. Y'all take care of yourself. Peace and blessing. Shalom.